There was plenty of action, excitement and drama in round 7 of Norway Chess. Well, let's take a look at the game between Vladimir Kramnik and Magnus Carlsen. Kramnik with the white pieces. He has just played his queen into the corner. Now, before we look at the consequences of that move, let's just look at the pawn structure, because that tells us a lot about the position. So this is after 22 moves. Its game started out as a gioco piano, an Italian game. But the game has more of the nature of a Benoni if you look at the structure. So white has this central pawn majority and black has a pawn on d6. A couple of moves before, or a move before, Kramnik had played this excellent move b4 to stymie black's queenside pawn majority. But you can see there's so much tension in the position. Rook a8 doesn't look like a bad move, looks like a pretty normal move to hold the file, and after the trade of queens, well, it would be very risky for white to trade pawns here. I mean, this is such a double-edged position with white with this sort of two-pawn majority in the middle against these two pawns here. Very hard to determine during a game who would be better there. Probably more pragmatic would be to keep the tension here and maybe move the rook along to one of these squares. But really tough decision for both sides. Really tough position to play. Instead of that, clearly Magnus wasn't happy with that and played queen to c7, which may not be so bad, but he had completely overlooked this move, bishop takes pawn. Now that's extraordinary, quite extraordinary. Obviously, if pawn takes bishop, then the queen swoops down the diagonal and takes, and obviously black's king is in big trouble. Well, if Magnus is overlooking simple tactics like that, it shows that he's really not in good form. And here he took on b4, so material is still level actually. And in fact, I think through sheer luck, things aren't so bad for black because the bishop is attacked and, well, still very complicated. Kramnik bashed on with the bishop, so obviously king takes bishop would allow knight h5. Check, there's a pin, and that's devastating. So Magnus continued with queen takes bishop. Queen takes f6. I mean, this does look desperate for black. Suddenly, from nowhere, his king has been ripped apart, but it's still not that clear because this pawn can be taken. Now, I think Magnus made a big mistake here. He took with the queen, which is very complex. Probably should have taken with the bishop. And after this, played queen c3 to chop the queens off as quickly as possible. And then rook e2, takes, and now just bring the bishop back. Now, I think objectively, well, or let's just say practically, I don't know, white should be better, or maybe theoretically white should be better, just because his pawns look nicer than black's. But black's chances shouldn't be underestimated here. I mean, black's pieces are active. This pawn is well advanced, so still a very unclear position. But I think, Magnus was clearly rattled by overlooking this shot. So he took on f2 with the queen. And then played bishop d8. Now this is a messy position, but now it has turned in white's favour, no doubt about that. So this obviously an important pawn to win. If king takes bishop here, then simply queen takes bishop is tremendous, and don't forget this knight is coming in on these light squares. So Magnus played knight h4, but it's pretty dire now. However, very tricky situation, and Kramnik now had to calculate extremely well. Kramnik played knight h5, and again this is a move that Carlsen had overlooked. There are some fascinating tactics here. First of all, if queen takes rook, then simply queen h6 is winning on the spot. Bishop takes h3. this is very interesting. This is the game continuation. So if king takes bishop, then queen takes rook, turns the tables completely. Black is doing well there. But instead of that, Kramnik had planned this move, rook g1. He played this extremely quickly, and I mean, this is brilliant to sort of hold your nerve in a game and realise that this is such a strong move. So obviously it prevents queen takes pawn mate, and incredibly black doesn't have a really good follow-up here. So there is still a threat to play queen h6, bishop g5 prevents queen h6, but now bishop f6, excellent move. And this is what Kramnik had to realise a couple of moves before. If bishop takes pawn, which at first glance looks like it's going to be a good move, because if rook takes, then black forces a draw like this, perpetual check. But here he'd appreciated that in this position he has a winning move, queen g3. Absolutely brilliant to appreciate this. So what's the point? Well, that queen has to be taken because of queen takes bishop. So queen takes queen, king takes queen, and basically black doesn't have a defense here. The bishop is hanging, this bishop is hanging, and of course if bishop takes bishop, knight takes, makes matters even worse. So just a superb shot there, queen g3 in that position. So instead of taking on g2, Carlsen played bishop g4, bishop takes bishop, and now the queen came in, and well, the rest is fairly simple. If the bishop retreats, then d6 is absolutely crushing. Black can't hold everything together, can't stop the pawn, can't prevent bishop f6. So the game finished, rook takes pawn, queen takes bishop, so white is now a piece up, and Kramnik's calculation was superb at the end here. Bishop f6, obviously threatening mate. Black has only one way out to trade queens, and now d6 is very efficient indeed. The rook can't get back behind the pawn, obviously, because of the bishop, and after this, rook d1, one check, and that was that. No way, no sensible way to prevent the pawn queening. So, very fine game from Kramnik, who recovers so well after his loss to Levon Aronian in the 6th round. But for Magnus, utter disaster. He has lost 2 games in the tournament. He hasn't won any. He is now at the bottom of the tournament table with 2.5 out of 7. At the top of the tournament, well, let's just have a quick look at Sergei Karjakin against Levon Aronian. Aronian is really in his element at the moment. He's playing so aggressively. He's playing with a very free hand, not afraid to attack. And in this game, it was another gioco piano. He threw his pawns forward. Now, in this position, actually, Karjakin has survived attack wave 1, and things aren't so bad. I mean, it's just a very double-edged position. Here, queen h3, probably a good idea, trading queens, and well, the players agreed afterwards that should be roughly level, the endgame. Instead, Karjakin played a rook g6, which on the surface of it doesn't look so bad. Karjakin said afterwards it was a terrible decision. In fact, the rook doesn't achieve too much. Let's see why. Well, first of all, Aronian played rook e8. This is the real problem with playing the rook here. If nothing comes of white's little adventure, then black simply controls the open file. This rook, for example, on e1 can't enter the game. And it's difficult for white now. So d4. King h7 wants to take the rook, so queen d3, and the king came back to g8. Now, if the queen goes back, the moment black would like to play f3 to break up white's kingside pawns, if the queen goes back, then king f7, threatening the rook again, the queen has to come here. Now, queen here. It looks disastrous for white. In fact, it's not so bad. If Karjakin had held his nerve and gone for this, he probably could have survived. I mean, this is still a very double-edged position. Black has the initiative, but probably objectively not so bad. But I think he was thrown by the fact that his rook g6 wasn't really working out as he intended. And he played d5, allowing f3. I think he convinced himself that his position wasn't too good. And f3 breaks up the kingside pawns and is just tremendous for black. So pawn takes pawn. I mean, obviously g3 not too good. Queen there, and well, let's come back. If nothing else, that will probably do something nasty here. I'm not quite winning the rook, but we're getting very close. I mean, this is dreadful. It could well be something else, but that's good enough. So pawn takes pawn. Rook f4, and this is just a very nice way to play. Just piling in with the rooks. This knight is hit. The knight should probably come back here. Karjakin had prepared this move king g2, and he thought this might be a clever defense, because if rook takes knight in this position, then rook h1, and suddenly this is an incredibly powerful counterattack, threatening things like rook takes bishop and the queen coming in. But instead of taking the knight, Levon just played rook f8, just increasing the pressure here. And here's the clever bit. If rook h1, hitting the queen, then rook g4 check, and this wins on the spot, because after this you take white's queen, and then, well, there are too many loose pieces after that. So good calculation from Levon here. Rook takes pawn threatened. Now knight d2, and now it's just a case of breaking open the king. That's nice. Rook f5 threatening to swing across and swing down, and now it's all one-way traffic. Well, I say that. Careful of the mate, but that's easy to deal with. But there's really no defense to, for example, this and, well, other moves as well. And now a simple bit of destruction to get through to the king. Now I've got to watch out for these pins here, so king h7. And if the rook goes to the side, then rook f5 and bishop takes queen. So Karjakin played rook takes bishop check, but there he resigned. Well, obviously with the king wide open, it's utterly lost, with the queen and pawn following up as well. So there we go. Levon Aronian continues his tremendous form, and he is now leading the tournament with 5 out of 7 clear on his own. Hikaru Nakamura, who was leading with him, only drew today against Anand. So Levon Aronian 5 out of 7, Hikaru Nakamura 4.5, and just behind them Anish Giri on 4, who defeated Vasilegrad, and Kramnik on 4 as well. 2 rounds to go. In round 8, Aronian plays Anand, and then he plays black against Wesley So in the final round. Nakamura plays Wesley So in round 8, and Caruana with black in round 9. Well, it's still wide open. I mean, really, any of those 4 players I've mentioned could still win the tournament.